Welcome to Shadow Fable, where urban legends and eerie tales converge in a realm of midnight terrors. Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe, because once the darkness calls, it rarely lets go. There are stories that seep from the cracks of our world, whispered on quiet streets and late-night internet forums. One legend stands out for its eerie simplicity: the smiling man. Some say he is a literal specter. Others believe he's a twisted figment of the imagination. But every person who encounters him shares one unshakable memory: a figure dancing under streetlights, wearing a grin too wide for comfort. I first heard about the smiling man in an online thread dedicated to nighttime anomalies. Scrolling through post after post, I stumbled on a strange account. The writer described seeing a tall, lanky individual moving in a bizarre dance through a deserted city block. They thought it was a trick of the mind, until the figure followed them, grinning like a sinister puppet. The story ended abruptly. No resolution, just a lingering dread. I brushed it off as an urban myth. I should have known better. Late one night, I was walking home after a stressful day. The city was unusually quiet, as if it were holding its breath. The street lamps flickered at uneven intervals, creating pockets of darkness along the sidewalk. Despite my fatigue, I kept glancing behind me, unnerved by how deserted the streets felt. Then I saw a silhouette near the corner. A tall man dressed in neutral colors, body slightly bent as though he were swaying. I convinced myself he was just another late-night wanderer, but the more I looked, the more wrong it felt. His posture was too stiff, yet his limbs twisted in subtle motions as if he were practicing dance steps. My pulse quickened, and I told myself I was being paranoid. As I came closer, I realized he was smiling. There was no reason to smile like that, a grin so wide it seemed to stretch across his entire face. It wasn't friendly, it was cold, like someone forcing their mouth into a shape they didn't understand. His eyes, though nearly in shadow, appeared to stare directly into mine. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. I picked up my pace. The man remained where he was, but his odd, measured dance never stopped. Even as I passed him, he continued swaying. The clip-clop of my shoes against the concrete echoed in the silent air. I pressed forward, refusing to glance back. Within seconds, I heard footsteps from behind, soft taps that matched the rhythm of my own. Against my better judgment, I risked a glance back and nearly choked on my breath. He was still smiling, only a few steps away, his lanky body performing a ghostly waltz as he advanced. It was as though gravity held less power over him. A sense of primal fear shot through me. I crossed the street, hoping he wouldn't follow. When I checked again, I found nothing but empty pavement. Relief fluttered in my chest, yet anxiety still buzzed in my limbs. Every muscle tensed to sprint if necessary. When I finally reached my building, I paused in the dim glow of the entryway light. My imagination must have run wild, right? Perhaps he was just a weirdo with an odd hobby. I stepped inside, sighing with relief as the lock clicked behind me. That night, I dreamt of a long corridor stretching into darkness. A faint swirl of music drifted through the air, and in the distance, a shape glided closer with that same chilling smile. I woke drenched in sweat, convinced for a moment it was real. Days passed without incident, though I couldn't shake the unease. Nights seemed darker, every flicker of movement stirring my pulse. Determined to find closure, I searched online for more accounts of the smiling man. The stories mirrored my own. People describing an uncanny dancer who'd appear late at night, moving in eerie, silent steps. His face was always locked in that nightmarish grin. One user claimed to have confronted him, only to find he dissolved into the shadows before their eyes. Another swore they had glimpsed him in their home's reflection, as if he could slip through mirrors. None of these encounters ended with calm reassurance. Every witness felt a lingering dread long after the figure vanished. Curiosity warred with terror. Part of me wanted to look for him again to see if there was a real person behind that grin. But reason won out. I had no desire to tempt fate, or whatever cosmic force the smiling man served. One evening, a friend named Lucy invited me to an all-night diner. She knew I was spooked about something but didn't know the specifics. Over greasy fries and endless coffee refills, I shared my story in hushed tones. Lucy, always the pragmatic one, suggested we look for him together, in her car. If he was truly just a person, we could confront him safely from inside a locked vehicle. If he wasn't, well, at least we could drive away fast. So, we embarked on a midnight drive. The neon lights of 24-hour grocery stores and gas stations blurred by. The deeper we went into the silent blocks, the more vulnerable I felt. My eyes scanned every sidewalk and alley, searching for a gliding silhouette, a swaying stance, a toothy grin. Lucy kept the radio off to minimize distractions. The quiet hum of the engine felt too loud, pounding with the tension in my chest. For an hour, we found nothing but empty roads and flickering streetlights. I almost let myself hope. Maybe the smiling man was a hallucination, a reaction to stress. That's when Lucy hissed, "Look!" She braked suddenly. Up ahead, haloed by a single flickering lamp, stood someone tall and lean, twisting his body in those signature dance-like motions. Lucy's face drained of color. It was exactly as I had described, the slow, deliberate steps, a posture both fluid and rigid, and a bizarre aura that screamed, "Unnatural." She started to roll forward, intending to pass him. But as our headlights swept over the figure, the man turned. That grin, impossibly wide, the corners almost reaching his ears, pierced through the windshield. My breath caught in my throat. Lucy slammed on the brakes in surprise. He took a silent step closer, arms rolling as though orchestrating invisible music. Lucy reversed in panic, the car jolting backward. We nearly crashed into a parking sign. My heart hammered so loudly I could feel it pulsing in my temples. In that split second, he moved again, faster than before. Each stride was laced with an uncanny grace, as though friction barely touched him. The grin never faltered. Every nerve in my body screamed for us to drive away. Lucy hit the gas, tires squealing as we sped off. The rearview mirror showed the man still standing beneath the lamp, dancing on the edge of the night. We didn't dare look back once we turned the corner. We returned to my apartment, hearts pounding. Lucy whispered, "What was he? A person can't move like that." I didn't have an answer. All I could say was, "He's the smiling man. At least now you believe me." That night, neither of us slept. We stayed up with the lights on, jumping at every distant creak. Even after Lucy left, I caught my reflection in the window and nearly screamed, thinking I saw that grin. Since then, I've learned there's no easy way to banish the smiling man. Some legends say he fixates on those who notice him, feeding on their fear. Others suggest ignoring him is the only way to make him disappear. But how do you ignore something so beyond human comprehension? Weeks passed without a sighting. My life resumed a cautious normalcy until a stormy evening when thunder rattled the windows. I was alone, reading by candlelight after a power outage. In a flash of lightning, I glimpsed movement outside. My stomach twisted in recognition. There, through the rain-slashed glass, a tall figure swayed under the flickering street lamp. My mind screamed his name, the smiling man. I stifled a sob of panic. The grin was barely visible through the sheets of rain, but I felt it, cold and triumphant. I couldn't tear my eyes from him. Then, in the next streak of lightning, he was gone. No footprints in the puddles, no sign he'd ever been there. I knew I had to tell my story, not just in hushed conversation with friends, but openly. Maybe if people understood the smiling man's existence, they'd be safer from him, or at least prepared if they saw him. So here I am, pouring out this tale in the faint hope of warning others. And if, one night, you're walking alone and spot a figure dancing under a flickering lamp, wearing a grin that defies human nature, remember this story. Turn away swiftly, seek shelter if you can, and pray that his empty eyes don't lock onto you. For once you've seen him, truly seen him, he might just follow you into every shadowy corner. Thank you for venturing into the darkness with me on Shadow Fable. If you found yourself glancing over your shoulder, that's only natural. After all, who knows what lingers on these deserted streets when midnight comes? Be sure to subscribe if you crave more tales that blend the real with the unimaginable. And as always, stay vigilant out there. Keep your eyes forward, your door locked, and that faint chord of fear in your mind, because sometimes it's the only warning you'll get. Sleep well, if you can.